my life feels like it's been made up of different lives. And so, like, when I started testosterone to now feels just like my life. But then I have to like go into a past life to move beyond that. And so that was even the next past life, because there was my life up until when I came out, and then there was my life until I started testosterone, and now it's a new one. So that's like 2 lives ago, basically.
That's
So that's like weird.
yeah. I like I've never heard anyone like use that analogy of it being like a past life, but like that makes complete sense to me. Like
Yeah, no,
I like that.
like I know that I lived it. I know it was me, but I feel so far removed from that time that it doesn't feel like this life
Right.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's crazy. I love going down memory lane for that reason, because I'm like, oh, I did that.
That's great.
Yeah, it's
So
weird.
when did you start testosterone? Or how old are you right now?
24.
24. And when did you start testosterone?
I actually started testosterone right before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
So it's been like 2.5 years now. So I was 22 when I started testosterone.
Okay. Do you take like pictures every so often to kind of track your progression?
I used to, and there's like a thing with people starting testosterone, well, where they'll be like, this is me the day I start testosterone. This is me
Right.
1 month on testosterone, to try to like track your voice change and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did that probably for 6 months, and then whatever. Now it's
Kept
just
it.
like, yeah. And so now I can look through selfies and like see,
Right.
but I don't even remember what day I started testosterone. So I don't even know how to be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is 27 months. So I have no idea.
Right. Right. Um, I feel like I have so many questions that I could just ask you about being on testosterone. We could
Oh,
probably
yeah.
do like a whole episode just on that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
so
Easily. Like, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
um, so where do you want to go? Do we want to start there, or do we want to just kind of like start from the beginning and try and go in like chronological order?
I would almost say that like transitioning and like testosterone and surgeries and doctor's appointments, that almost needs its own episode.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Probably we should just start from the beginning.
Yeah. So I think we should save that for like an episode two. We can just focus on that.
Yeah.
So okay, so when we do talk about your intro, where do we want to start with your intro?
Una, sorry, my cat. Um, I would probably say we should start the year that I graduated high school, my senior year.
Okay, let's start there. Senior year.
Senior year, yeah. So, um, towards the end of it, I was getting very, very depressed. Um, as soon as I graduated, 2 days later, I left to Brazil for a humanitarian trip. I came back, then I went to a national competition, came back. I was really struggling the whole time. Um, Not because like I was away from home, I was just struggling, period. Um, I had this really, really good friend who, looking back now, totally had a crush on her. Didn't realize it. Um, just thought she was like my best friend.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Love that, right?
Yeah.
But then my parents thought we were lesbians.
Uh huh.
And so they were like, I don't want you hanging out as much. And I was like, guys, it's not that. It was that. But I was like, it's not that. And then her parents, I think, thought the same thing. So her parents um, made us like friend breakup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was basically my entire support system at that time. I really didn't have anyone else. So that sent me spiraling. I ended up in the psych ward, and I got out. They wanted me to be doing this program called DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. So I tried out a bunch of different groups, and none of them were fitting right.
When you say groups, what do you mean by that?
Like therapy groups.
Uh huh.
So like I went to one at this therapy office in Pleasant Grove, and it was like a group of people 18 and younger. But I was 18, so I was like the oldest one there, and then the next
Hmm.
closest was 13. So I was basically with kids, and like I was struggling with some really dark issues. Old, thank you, cat. Um, I was struggling with like some really dark issues, and these kids were like, me and my brother got into a fight today, and so I was like,
Mm.
not meshing. So I tried a different group, and it was 18-year-old me and like 65-year-old ladies.
Mm.
So once again, not meshing. um, so that therapy office in Pleasant Grove called me, and they were like, hey, we had this therapist who had been thinking about doing a young adult group, but you would be the only one in it for now. And then like if people
Mm.
join later, they join later. So that's how I met my current therapist. Is I was in this group, but it was just me and her, which was super super awesome. And when the election happened, um, we were talking, and I was like, this feels like such a bad place for a country to be going in. Like I'm really worried for a bunch of uh, minority groups, especially like the LGBT community is already going through so much. And I'm Mormon, so I'm not gay. And she goes, well, you can be Mormon and gay. And I was like, hmm? And so she like kind of sent me on this. Yeah, well, you can't. But anyways, that's a different story. Um, but I was still Mormon at that time, and I obviously had that friend that I had this super big crush on. And so that sent me on this big kind of discovery era. This was probably in November. In December, I moved out onto into my first apartment. Um, January was my birthday, and it was about my birthday that like I said out loud to myself for the first time that I was bisexual. Um, because for me, going from straight to gay
Hmm.
was too much, so I took a side street first.
Hmm.
Started dating my
Which, sorry to interrupt, but that I think that's an
no,
interesting point. I think a lot of people do that,
yeah,
but I don't think I ever did that. I was just like,
really.
nope, I'm. No, I don't think so.
Well, I was bisexual, but once I like said that out loud to myself, I only like I went on Tinder and I was like girls only,
Yeah.
and so like I was not searching for guys anymore at that point.
Hmm.
Um, Started dating my first girlfriend in March. Um, we went through a lot actually our first year together. Um, we got engaged after 9 months, which is it was a mistake, but whatever.
Is this
So
okay? Do you remember when we went to Zupa's?
yeah, it was that girl.
Okay, okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay.
So I ended up marrying her, and then we got divorced, but whatever. That first year, um, when I was living in my apartment in Provo, I would go home for Sunday dinner every night. And at this point, I had stopped going to church. Um, didn't tell my parents that, um, but I didn't go home for this one Sunday dinner. It was Easter, I think, actually. And my mom was like, let's go on a drive the next day. Let's go get some dinner, whatever. She was like, so why didn't you come home? And I was like, well, because I was with my girlfriend. And she goes, your friend who's a girl or your girlfriend? And I go, my girlfriend. First words out of her mouth were, when did you decide it was okay to be gay? Uh, Follow up sentence was, don't tell your father. He doesn't need to know. So that went poorly. Um, Over the next 3 to 5 months, um, went through a lot of manipulation. Um, my ex, what I know now, was very emotionally manipulative, as were my parents. They would tell me, you just need to break up with her, you need to come home, you need to get back on the right track. I would go to her and be like, okay, we need to break up. And she'd be like, well, then I'm going to kill myself. So she ended up in the psych ward. Um, but it was just like this whole back and forth, and I was torn between kind of everything. Um, I ended up going no contact with my parents for about 6 months. I want to say 6 or 7. I don't know. That was the first Christmas I didn't spend with them. That was the first birthday that I wasn't with them. I asked if they, because I got engaged right before my birthday, 3 days before. And so I asked, I was like, do you guys want to go to dinner? And they're like, no, you two should just celebrate alone. And like when I told them that I got engaged, they didn't say congratulations or anything. They just said thanks for letting us know. So that was a whole hullabaloo that we went through. Um,
Do you think
fast,
do you think a lot of that was mostly because of you being gay or because they didn't like her and how she was treating you?
they didn't see the backside of things.
Okay.
Um, they also basically refused to be with her. Like when I came out, they were like, I don't ever want her in this house.
Mm-hmm.
You, all of your family will never. Actually, it was my mom's sister who like let my ex come into the house first. And so I was like, okay, well, your sister let her in. Like, why can't you let her in? Um, it was very much so because I was gay. At one point, um, they were like, you need to break up with her. And I was like, well, I'm not. We have this cat together. And they were like, forget the cat, just leave the cat. Come home. Once you're doing better and you're making progress and you're going to church again, we'll get you a puppy. So I was literally bribed with a puppy to stop being gay.
No,
No,
no.
no, yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, it was this whole thing. So after my birthday, we had just gotten engaged. Birthday's in January. Fast forward to October, we decided to elope. Um, so we got married. It was me, her, the photographer, our three closest friends, and my cousin. So it's just the seven of us.
Did you post about that like on social media?
No, I posted the pictures, but I
Uh-huh.
didn't tell anyone.
Okay, because I
Um,
didn't know that you were married. Because I
yeah,
remember you were dating someone, but I didn't know you guys actually ended up getting married.
yeah, I had posted that we were engaged, but
Uh-huh.
I never posted that we got married.
Mm.
Um, and my, I can't remember who, someone said something to my dad, like, oh, Nick and their wife. And so my dad called me. I was at work and he was like, are you married? And I was like, yeah. So that was a thing that
Uh-huh.
happened. Um, we got married in October though, and by February I knew I wanted a divorce
Mm-hmm.
already. That's when I met my now fiance
Mm-hmm.
because I just actually proposed over the weekend.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Um, Met her because we were working together, and by the time that I knew I wanted a divorce was when I was figuring out that I was not a girl anymore. I knew that I wasn't a girl, and so I was like, "Hey, I don't think I'm a guy either, so let's try non-binary out." So I came out as non-binary to everyone. When I came out to my ex-wife, she was like, "Oh, okay." And then when I told her I wanted top surgery, she was like, "Well, I really like your boobs, but I guess you can do whatever you want with your body." And I was like,
Thanks.
"Thanks, yeah, cool." So Alyssa, who's my fiance now,
Mm-hmm.
um, when I came out to her, she was like, "Okay, what pronouns do you want me to use?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't really care, like they them, but like you can just call me whatever." And she goes, "No, what do you want?" And that was the first moment that someone prioritized what I wanted rather than just what they were comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, she's a really nice person.
Yeah.
And so we started hanging out a lot. I cut my hair short, um, and kind of started dressing and acting more in a way that felt comfortable. Um, After, I don't know, February, March, April, probably 3-ish months, four-ish months of us hanging out, I was like, man, I like really, really like this girl. Like she actually values me and she's actually like very kind and supportive. And when I told her I wanted top surgery, she was like, cool, sounds good. Do whatever you want. And I was like, what is this? Meanwhile, my wife was still dead naming me and using the wrong pronouns. And every time I would bring it up, she'd be like, well, I've just known you as a girl. So this is just really hard. And like even still to this day, I saw a post from my ex, and she still calls me a girl and everything. So I know I made the right choice. Um, but it kind of blew up in the fact that my ex confronted me while we were at work. I don't know why she did it at work. That's the stupidest thing. But she comes up to me and she's like, "You love Alyssa, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, I do." And she's like, "Well, you're married to me." And I was like, "You're correct. And I have made this commitment to you. Um, I will maintain this commitment to you. Um, but we'll need to go to therapy. We'll need to work through this. And I like, I can cut her out of my life. I can do whatever because I am married to you. But I need you to have that same commitment to me. I need you to understand you can't keep using my wrong pronouns. You can't keep dead naming me. Like, I'll work on it, but you also have to work on it." And a couple days later, she came back and she was like, "I'm moving to California to live with my mom for at least a month. And maybe after a month, I can come back and we can try again." And I said, "No, I'm making this commitment. But if you're leaving, like you're leaving, there is no coming back from that. Like I will just move on." And so she was like, "Okay, then I'm moving to California." So we broke up. But her mom was actually the person who was the name on our lease on our house.
Mm-hmm.
So I became homeless for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Alyssa and her roommate let me move in with them. So I brought, it was me, my dog, 2 cats, and a hamster all moved into their tiny little 2-bedroom apartment. Yeah. Yeah. And like that same week, um, my boss at my job, my ex had gone around and told everyone that I cheated on her, and I never did. Um, but everyone kind of took sides, and so a ton of people at my then job hated me from that point on. The manager is one of them, and so he was treating me like shit. So I was like, "Here's my 2-week notice," and he goes, "Just leave today and don't come back."
Mm-hmm.
So then I was jobless. Um, so I started looking for a job. Me and Alyssa started talking about finding like our own place together because her roommate starts being really mean, um, and is like making me pay rent, which is totally fair. So instead of doing half and half, we did thirds. Um, but then she brought her boyfriend in, and we didn't go down to fourths. It was still just thirds. So that was weird. And she started getting pissed off that the cats were there. And then I lost the cats, and then I found a cat. And then her roommate, even though Alyssa was on the lease, kicked both of us out. Um, so I had to move in with my parents. She had to move in with her parents. And at this point, I've left the church. My dad's a bishop. I have come out as they thought I was a lesbian, but I'm not a lesbian anymore. Cut my hair short and everything like that. So tensions were very high. We luckily found an apartment within 3 weeks of me living at my parents.
So
Um,
at that point, when you're at your parents' house,
mhm.
what did you identify as at that point?
I was non-binary,
Mm-hmm.
and once I kind of settled into that, I just decided I was pansexual.
Hmm.
So I've been bisexual, lesbian, non-binary, and pansexual is where I ended up. But yeah, I found a new job. At this point, we moved into our new place. Um, my hamster died. My grandma died. Um, but things kind of started to settle down. The cat that I lost, someone called me and was like, I found your cat. And my cat was a grown girl, like 3-year-old girl. And he handed me a boy kitten. And I said, oh, no. And he goes, well, I can't keep it. So that's
What?
how that's how we got Kason.
That's oh my goodness. I wonder if people do that all the time to get rid of
Yeah, I don't
like
know.
kittens. That is so funny. I'm
I
glad you
mean,
kept the kitten. That was very nice of
yeah.
you.
Well, because I was just like, and he just like walked away, and I,
You're like, what am I gonna do?
yeah, literally. So I like drove to Alyssa's work because she was at work, and she goes, "Is it Atlas?" And I go, "Well," and I roll down the window, and there's this little tiny kitten. She's like, "What have you done?" And I was like,
Uh,
"I don't,
You're
I
like, I
don't know what
saved the
I've done.
kitten.
I swear to God, I don't know what I've done." Um, but yeah, my dad's he was a bishop up until like 3 months ago, so that was tricky when I left the church because my records were technically under him, so he was the first person to know that I removed my records. When I first came out, my dad's entire side of the family left, save like 2 cousins.
Hmm.
Um, they don't even bother with my existence anymore. My mom's side of the family, I had to cut my grandparents out because um, I told them before the election, I was like, look, if the 2020 election, I was like, look, if you vote for Trump again, um, like I can't have you in my life anymore. He's fighting to take away literally every one of my rights, and it will just show that you don't love me enough to move past my sexuality. Um, that you care more about your church policies than you do me. So I had to cut them out. Um, at that new job that I had gotten, the that's when I started testosterone was when I was at that job.
Hmm.
So they all kind of watched my transition happen. And towards the end of it, I had this manager who started being really, really transphobic to me. Um, and I had a different manager come up and was like, hey, just so you know, this manager or like the kitchen, first of all, is having an issue with you using the boys' restroom. But we told them they can't have an issue with that. You can use whatever restroom. And she goes, this other manager is saying that you can't flip flop back and forth, though, and that when you wake up in the morning, you can't just choose your gender, and that you kind of just need to choose one and stick to it. And that really hurt because I'd been there for like a year and a half at that point.
Hmm.
And so we kind of escalated it up the ladder of bosses. And the very next day, that manager that said all those things like ran up and he was like, well, I never said all those mean things. I just said you couldn't choose your gender when you wake up and that you just only need to use the men's restroom from now on. Like you can't just use whatever one. And I was like, so actually legally I can use whatever one I want. Second of all, I'm not choosing my gender, but thanks so much. So we escalated it. They weren't doing anything. So I actually ended up having to sue them for employment discrimination. Um, so I quit, obviously. But yeah, that's kind of a simplified version of the past 3 years.
So now, what are you working now?
Yeah, yeah.
So where are
So
you
I've
working
had
now?
now I work at the Bayou downtown. I'm a bartender and a server.
Nice.
Um, it's really fun. The people there are really, really great. They're incredible.
Do your parents know that you are, well, I guess what are your pronouns right now and where do you find yourself today?
Um, yeah, so my pronouns are still they, them.
Mm-hmm.
That'll never change.
Mm-hmm.
I get called he a lot just because of the way I talk and look and dress and everything, and
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. That doesn't bother me. It's really weird when I get a she every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, where are you pulling that from?
Mm-hmm. Because I mean,
Um,
you have a beard, right?
yeah, like I have,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You got like a full beard.
yeah. So I'm like, where are you pulling she from? It
Okay.
has, it has actually been really interesting though, um, because when I come out to people, sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, so are you wanting to start like estrogen or like get breast implants?" And I'm like, "No, no, actually, I am on testosterone." And they're like, "Oh,
Oh.
wow, I wouldn't have guessed." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." You don't say.
Oh, that's funny. So,
Yeah, so it's been really funny.
so how long do you think, and I don't know if I'm gonna say this correctly, but how long have you been, I want to say passing as a male, but I don't know if that's the correct terms. Because when
Yeah,
I
no, it is. Yeah, I'm not a trans male, but I pass as male, so like
mm-hmm,
that is how you would say that. 'Cause there's really no other way to say that.
mm-hmm,
Um, I my voice was the first thing to change.
mm-hmm,
I started growing a little bit of facial hair after 6 to 8 months. Um, and my shoulders got a lot broader and I put on a little more weight.
uh-huh,
So I would say it was probably 8 months after I started testosterone that I
okay,
started getting he. Um, and it would be funny too because I was still serving. My voice was not this deep. I did not have this much facial hair or anything. And so I'd go up to a table and say it was a couple. One of them would be like, "Oh, thanks so much, ma'am." And then the other one would be like, "It's a guy." And they were like, "Is it?" And so I confused a lot of people for a while. But I thought that was fun. I like
yeah.
confusing people.
Do you remember the first time that you saw your parents and like they noticed that you like had facial hair or were starting to look more like a man?
Yeah, so I started testosterone and I saw them 2 weeks later, and obviously at that point, really no changes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then the pandemic hit, so I actually didn't see my parents um, for probably a year and a half
Okay.
at least. So I told them they changed insurance plans at the beginning of the pandemic too. So I lost my insurance coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I was like, fuck it, I'll come out to them. I don't care. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm on testosterone. I am non binary and I'm planning on getting top surgery, just so you know. Um, so they knew about 4 months after I started testosterone, but they didn't see me again for like another 14 months.
Uh-huh.
So it definitely, they had heard my voice on the
Okay.
phone, and I think they had seen a picture of me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was like from no change to all of these changes in the first visit.
Right. Tell me a little bit more about your parents' reaction to the first time they saw you after that year and a half or so.
Um, it was very interesting. So I had cut them out again for a while just because the relationship was not healthy. Um, and I was talking with my therapist about it, and I was like, I want to have a relationship with my parents, but where they are at now um, is not a place where I can let them back into my life. So we had them go see my therapist actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they only went 3 times, which I don't think was enough, but it was 3 times more than before. Um, so they went and they were talking to her, and they were just like, I don't know, like all of these changes are going to be permanent, and they kept dead naming me. Oh, whoa, dude, sorry. Um, Jessica told me that they were, so I texted them and I was like, look, if I want this relationship, but if you also want it, I need you to understand that this is not changing. I'm not coming back to the church. I am transgender and I will be continuing with my transition. You have to use my pronouns. You cannot dead name me. Like, you have to give me at least that respect.
I heard you use that term a lot. What do you mean by that?
So dead naming is when you use a trans person's birth name.
Okay.
So there are trans people that just keep their birth name, and that's totally fine. It's their choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a lot of times when trans people come out, um, they choose a new name and they
Okay.
choose what they want to be called. So I just chose Nick because I've gone by Nick since I was literally 4 years old.
Right.
Um, they've called me Nick in the past, so I don't know why they just reverted to my birth name. I was like, it's you just cut it in half. I don't know what to tell you. Like,
So
easy
what?
peasy.
So what were they calling? What's your full name? Because I've only known you by Nick.
Yeah, so I was born Nicole.
Nicole. Okay.
So they just reverted back to
Back to
that, and I
Nicole.
was like, yeah, I was like, you literally only called me that when I was in trouble. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
why are you like you have always called me? Everyone's always called me Nick. Like,
Uh-huh.
exactly, that's just what I've gone by. So I was like, what? So I told them, I was like, listen, the name that I've chosen is Nicholas Cove. I'm gonna still go by Nick, but you have to respect that. And that was after the first session with my therapist. And the next two sessions, they actually did very well. And like if my mom messed up my pronouns, my dad would correct her, and vice versa. So they really improved from that point. We started talking a little more frequently, like texting a little more frequently, but it took another 8 months until I was like, okay, let's meet up. I feel like it's kind of settled in that this is not changing. So I met with just my mom first. Um, I was terrified. I was so scared. I was ballsy though, and we went to like a little dinner, and I ordered a mimosa in front of her, and I was like, I don't even care. Like, I need a drink.
Uh-huh.
Um, but like when she saw me, we hugged. I could tell that she felt a little off, but as I was kind of talking about my life and explaining like what had been happening, that I was paying all my bills, I had an apartment, me and Alyssa were like thriving, all of our animals were healthy, we were taken to the vet, and just like, I guess, proving that I was being an adult and I was living my life and that I was healthy and happy, I think really helped and relaxed her. And by the end, it definitely was a lot less stiff, and the air of tenseness had
Mm-hmm.
kind of gone away. And then after that, I texted my dad and I was like, "Hey, it's your turn. Let's go to dinner." I didn't get a drink with him because he was going to be the easier of the two conversations. Um, but it's still definitely at first he was like, "Oh." I could tell both of them were kind of like, oh shit, like
Mm-hmm.
you have facial hair and your
Right.
voice is deep now. Yeah, like this is whoa. But once again, just like I'm doing well and I'm happy now, I think
Mm-hmm.
really helped. And so we ended up, me and Alyssa and my parents all actually went out for dinner. I'm sure that was so long ago. It was in November. But we all went out to dinner and they've been really great. And when I texted them that I proposed to Alyssa, they actually said congratulations and like we're happy for me. And so they've come a long way, and I do have hopes for our relationship
Mm-hmm.
together, but it's taken years to get
Yeah.
to this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm
I get
glad that you guys are in it sounds like a much better place now than you have been
yeah,
in the past.
yeah, for sure. And we're back level, not to we're not back to where we started from, because like when I my senior year of high school, I was super, super close actually with my parents. And so to have to go from super close to like cutting them out completely out of my life multiple times was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now coming back, like I'm able to like text them jokes. I feel like I can call them if I need to. So that's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's definitely still some progress to be made. I don't know what that looks like, but it's getting better for sure.
So, if you had any advice to give parents who are going through a child who is transitioning or um, coming out as LGBTQ plus, what advice do you give to those parents?
I actually was just talking to a mom like 2 days ago because her daughter is like coming out as bi or lesbian and looking into her gender identity. And the mom was very concerned and she was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And I was like, okay, so the best thing you can do is literally not change because your child, like physically, might change. They might transition. They might start dating a girl or a boy or whatever. Um, but at the end of the day, literally none of that matters. It is still just your child. They want that same relationship with you. If they trust you enough to be coming out, then they value your relationship and they're not scared of you. So don't change anything. Literally just still be their parent and just still be like their friend sort of thing. Um, if you have a kid who's coming out as trans, that can be a whole process. And obviously, there's a lot of medical shit that's going to be happening. If they're underage, I would get them on hormone blockers. And a lot of parents say, "Oh, what if they change their mind?" And they might, and that's acceptable, and they totally can because once again, it's their journey. It's not your journey. Hormone blockers can be started and stopped, and if they're stopped, literally nothing changes. It just pauses puberty. So it's for a trans kid to not have to go through puberty. Like I've gone through puberty now twice because I did girl puberty and now I went through boy puberty. So if you can stop that girl puberty, if they change their mind, it'll just keep going. Like it does not have any permanent um, like effects. Um, if they're over 18 and they want to get on hormones, let them. Once again, it's not your body, it's not your journey, it's theirs. Um, Going back to the what if they change their mind? Some people do, but it's very very rare. I think there's a statistics or a statistic, and it's like I can't remember the exact number. It's like 95 to 99% of trans people who start the transition process don't regret it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I have not regret a single minute
Mm-hmm.
of my transition. I would have started earlier if I knew this is where I was going to end up because growing up going through girl puberty, I would look in the mirror and I would try to like claw off my boobs because I did not want them. I hated them. I hated looking in the mirror. And now I haven't had top surgery yet, but even still having boobs, like I can look in the mirror and I'm like, hell yeah, that's who I am. Like I am now comfortable in my skin.
Mm-hmm.
So just let your kid become comfortable in their skin.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you get a haircut and you walk out of that salon and you're like, fuck yeah, I look like a boss ass bitch. That's how your kid's gonna feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why you wouldn't want that for your child.